Hello everyone and welcome to episode 46 of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined in conversation by Nicole, a fashion designer and the founder of Fern Daisy based in Appalachia in the USA. I absolutely loved meeting Nicole and I'm so grateful I get to share her with you all, as she has such a beautiful vision to create hope and be a responsible steward of both Mother Nature and her community. Her experience within the large brand fast fashion industry left her grappling with the disconnect between her desire for sustainability both at an environmental and social level and the detrimental impacts of the industry she loved. Determined to find a better way, she launched her own ethical clothing brand, which makes some truly beautiful garments designed to last so that they can be cherished for years. Whilst discussing some of the difficulties within the fashion industry, including the huge amount of waste throughout the supply chain, Nicole offered some fantastic and easy steps we can all consider as consumers to help reduce the environmental impact of fashion. From explaining some of the more sustainable textiles and fibres that the clothes we buy can be made from, to some easy tips for caring for your existing clothes that can help increase their longevity. Woven through our conversation and into the DNA of her business is Nicole's deep connection to Appalachia and the hardships the communities here have faced, including the more recent impacts from opioids. She is committed to supporting her community and is a beautiful reminder to all of us to lay down our judgment, step into compassion and find ways to uplift those around us. Well, welcome Nicole, and thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. You're in a very interesting industry and someone I haven't spoken to before about fashion, and I'm sure we're going to have lots to talk about. But just to get us started, I always ask my guests to share a little bit about their nature story and just really what maybe nature means to you, or any fond memories, or how your relationship might have evolved over time. So if there's something you'd like to share to get us started, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. Well, I want to first say thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Fiona. I'm really excited about this opportunity and get to talk about something I'm super passionate about, which is why I started my business. So I'm just super stoked to be here. So my nature story, when you first said it, it really made me think of when I was a child, and I grew up in rural Appalachia, which is known to be very mountainous, very rural and hilly, and we have a lot of watersheds in our region, different watersheds, and playing in the creeks, which is just like little streams and things. All of my family members had a creek outside of their house. My house was the only house that didn't have a creek in all of our family. But I just remember playing in creeks, picking up frogs and crawdads, things like that. And, just spending hours and hours and hours in the creek, and it being so serene and beautiful, and walking to the lake or to the river from their houses. And spending a lot of time on water. And now as an adult, I get to use a lot of the waterways that we have in East Tennessee and Eastern Kentucky to kayak and whitewater raft.
Oh, wow.
And so protecting that is very important to me. I love being on the water. It's so much cooler there in the summer. It feels like, because you're in the shade, a lot of time there's trees over the water and things like that. And then also the water just adds extra cooling. So for me, that is a huge part of why I love nature. And that seems kind of selfish, but
no, not at all.
It's really special. And I want other people to get to experience such a fun thing that you can do with this, natural things that exist outside that a lot of people don't have, or it seems intimidating to do, right? To get in a kayak and go on the water. You don't really know where you're going and things like that. So yeah, I want there to be access to things like that, because I think it is super special. And I think if people get to spend time doing it, they're going to want to protect it, right?
Yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, from my photography background, that was always part of my kind of ethos, was if you can kind of share with people like your passion and,
Hmm.
just connect them to it, it's like we intrinsically will protect the things we love. And so the
Yeah.
first step has to be helping people to develop this connection and this relationship with the natural world so that they love it and then they'll care for it in a different way.
Hmm.
So yeah, I love that. I love all your stories. It's being on water, I think, is really special, and
Yeah.
it's such an important part of our environment. I mean, I'm sure in America you've probably got similar problems. In the UK, we're facing quite a lot of crisis around our rivers and streams and
Mhm.
creeks and our oceans as well. A lot of
Mm.
pollution going on. So it's important
Yeah.
that we can
Yeah.
try and protect them so that people in the future can have those amazing memories like you did, walking
Hmm.
barefoot through the rivers and playing with all
Yeah.
the animals and wildlife that they find there. So I love that. But
Mm.
I think, I mean, you mentioned your home, and that's an important part of your business as well, isn't it? It's part of
Yeah.
what's inspired your incredible business, which is Fern and Daisy. And
Mm.
you're a clothing company, aren't you? Essentially,
Yes.
a
Yes.
small, um, I guess, would you say bespoke kind of,
Sure, that's a great word.
yeah,
Every time someone tries to add a word to it and it's like a positive word, I'm like, yeah, that's a
yeah.
great word. Awesome. Yeah, no, that is a really good word. So all of our clothes are made in small batches. And all that means is that we only make 25 pieces of each garment.
Oh, wow.
And so it is unique. It's one of a kind. We only make 5 to 7 in each size as well, depending on the size range that we offer. And so yeah, it is that small batch where all the textiles that we're using are either from Canada or from North or South Carolina here in America, and trying to keep it as closed circle as possible, as closed loop as possible, in the
Mm.
sense that, we're making sure that none of the textiles go to waste. The fibers that we're using are good for the planet, and can last long when you wear it as
Yeah,
well. It's so important to me that people feel like they can invest in something
yeah,
that they want to wear for a long time, that they want to reach for, and that blends really well in people's closets. I love really classic, simple design. I think that's the thing that we tend to reach for over and over again in our
yeah,
closet, and then to inject and pop in like more fashion forward things. I'm using air
yeah,
quotes around that because fashion is kind of not what it used to be in the last 20 years because of the internet.
yeah.
Which a good, bad thing, whatever. But yeah, sorry, I kind of got a little tangent about that. But my brand, I'll talk about that for a second if you would like, is based in America in Appalachia, which is a region that kind of goes up not on the eastern seaboard, but like a little bit to the west of that. It's the mountainous region. It goes from, well, there's two different definitions of it. One is just like the Appalachian Mountain Range,
Yeah.
and then there is the one where Appalachia isn't that is impacted by the culture and the people group that is there, and kind of the hardships around Appalachia. Historically, when the rest of America was booming, had a lot of industry, good money. Everyone's like the American dream. Again, air quotes around that. Appalachia was still living like it was the 1800s for a long time,
Yeah.
and my grandmothers lived like that. My brand is named Fern and Daisy, and that's after my two grandmothers.
Oh,
In
lovely.
my region, in my community, we call them Memal. So I had a Memal Fern and a Memal Daisy, and so I named the business after them because they just, to me, represented so much of the hardship of Appalachia, but then also the how
Resilience,
you're
maybe?
yeah, the
Yeah.
resilience, and then how you could overcome a lot of things, which is resilience, but just that like giving back to people. And then my grandmother Fern, actually, she had a pretty hard life, but at the age of 50 she went back to college and became a nurse,
Oh,
and
wow.
then was a nurse for until she retired at 75 at the men's prison in the state of Kentucky. And so she spent the
Oh,
last 20 years of her life serving this population of people who have, for good or bad reasons, not really good reasons, but either their own fault or not their fault at all. That's what I should say, had
Yeah.
ended up in this horrible situation. So both of them were huge inspirations to me. My grandmother Daisy was very artistic and taught me a lot about native plant life and how to use herbs and flowers to um, heal ourselves, to use
Yeah.
that for like
Yeah.
medicinal purposes, but
Yeah.
then also to use it for to make baskets and to paint with.
Oh,
She
wow.
taught me how to use flower petals to make paint, and she was
Oh,
into
wow. She sounds
photography,
like an
and
amazing woman.
yeah, she was great. So
Yeah.
I had two very different grandmothers, but they both taught me so much, and I
Yeah.
think created this like beautiful mesh of a person that I am, right? All these different pieces together.
Yeah.
And I talk about my life kind of planting seeds to kind of grow into what Fern and Daisy became. So I studied apparel and textiles design in college and got started in the fashion industry as an apparel designer. I worked for some bigger brands that are like well known in the US. There's a department store here that I worked for a long time. I worked for like what would kind of be like the American version of maybe ASOS, or do you have
Okay.
ASOS there? Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. I
But
think
then
we
it's all
have quite a few of your brands now. I
yeah.
think gradually over
Well,
time.
I know that you don't have this one because it's a very American. It feels like Forever 21 is a brand here in America. I don't know if you have that there, but this feels like the Forever like 41. Like it's an older lady
Yeah.
brand, but it's still that really cheap, like
Yeah.
not good for the planet, very fast fashion clothes. That was one of my first jobs out of college. And at the time I saw it as an opportunity to um because I'm from such an impoverished area, I knew that people in where I'm from maybe would buy a $20 sweater and keep it for a long time. And they
Yeah.
would cherish that sweater and they
Yeah.
would really love it and take care of it.
Because it
But
was a
then
lot
as
of
I,
money for
yeah,
them. Yeah.
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 But then, and maybe not even, I mean, it is a lot of money, but not even that. It's just like they valued the thing. It wasn't
Okay.
even the money side of it. They valued and they knew that they didn't want to overconsume,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
over consumerism hadn't really like hit as much from where
Yeah.
I'm from as other places. Um, and so then I got in the industry and I really realized that, oh no, they want to sell 10,000 of that $20 sweater and they don't
Yeah.
care what happens to it. And if it gets clearanced out and they sell it for $1.75, they don't mind because they're still making money on it because it probably only cost them 50 cents to make in the first
Yeah.
place.
Wow.
At the, the on the backs of, I don't want to say forced labor because it's kind of always hard to know for sure if it's forced labor or not forced labor, but definitely if they're paying 50 cents for the sweater,
There's
it's
a
not
problem with
no,
the
it's
production phase of
it's not a
it.
good labor. You know what I mean? Just something
Yeah.
not there is not good. And
Yeah.
then also the materials are cheap and usually with lots of plastic in it and things that won't ever be recycled and also can't really be reused because once it gets some wear on it, nobody wants to wear a grubby sweater that feels gross. You know what I mean? That's only
Yeah.
good for the first couple wears.
Yeah.
So I really quickly identified an issue in the industry and started working for more sustainable brands and brands where the designs and what we were designing was something that someone maybe would spend a lot more money buying and maybe hopefully the hope was that they wouldn't overconsume it, right?
Yeah.
And so I worked for some outdoor brands and really loved my job, but still felt like it wasn't enough. I could still see the tentacles of that fast fashion kind of idea
Yeah.
in the way that we were working and a lot of pressure to sell a lot. And, and I know it's a business. I have a business. I know that you want to make money and all these things, but I believe that the first thing should be to be good stewards of what we've been given.
Yeah.
And the thing that we've been given is our planet and the people that are making our products. Like people's lives are so much more important than us meeting a goal or a sales goal
Yeah.
or and things like that. So
Oh,
I decided,
I've just got goosebumps listening to you
yeah,
because it's
thank
just
you.
no, it's lovely to meet someone who's so passionate about this. And I think for a lot of people, they probably don't, I think there's more awareness, I think, come forward in maybe sort of the last 5 to 10 years of
Mm,
some of the impacts of the fashion industry. I think the fashion industry, like you've touched on, has also gone through a period of huge growth, hasn't it, in the last
mhm,
20 odd years. So I guess that sort of has gone hand in hand with why people are now sort of becoming more aware of it because the impact of it has
mhm.
has actually just gone huge in
Yeah.
comparison to what it was. And I mean, I remember growing up, I'm about sort of 40, and I remember growing
Mhm.
up and you know, your clothes lasted, and
Yeah.
you would buy, you'd certainly have certain pieces in your wardrobe that you would invest a bit more in, and they would
Yeah.
be like these pieces that you would have, years on years, and you really look
Hmm.
after and care for. And I've seen the evolution of this kind of, people don't really have that anymore, do they? It's like,
Mm-mm.
it's like, and I find it frustrating because the items wear out as well. So I still have this mindset that I want to buy something and be able to enjoy it. And then I'm like, oh, but now it's got holes in it. And, you
Yeah.
try and repair bits as best you can, but some things you can't repair. And I mean, I think that's one side of it, isn't it? But there is something that you touched on, which probably people maybe know less about, which is the aspect of this huge waste before it even gets anywhere near the consumer,
Hmm.
of just items just being overproduced. They can't sell them and they're just disposed of, and it is this huge, huge problem, isn't it, in the industry of actually, like, the waste is not even the consumer end. It's like
Yeah.
actually in the, like, it's not quite the manufacturing process because they've finished manufacture, but it's like in that sort of retail space, isn't it, of
Yeah.
yeah.
The thing that's unfortunate is we have placed such a high demand as consumers in the Western world, right? So I'm
Yeah,
including Canada and Europe and America on these Eastern countries and even South America too, to produce our goods at such a high volume so quickly that they kind of prepare themselves for it, right? And so
yeah,
they're making fabrics. They're doing as much trend forecasting as
yeah,
designers are in these countries.
yeah,
And they are making stuff preemptively that sometimes just goes in the trash, that
yeah,
gets thrown away. And then also, in brands we often buy, tens of thousands of something or 1,000 of something, and it gets distributed across all these stores. And I mean, I sometimes will walk in, and I used to be a consumer who would shop at, Target, which is an American store. And now I walk in and I feel so much anxiety because all of
yeah,
the clothes that are in there would be enough to clothe my whole town
yeah,
for, the foreseeable future. But then I know that in 3 months all those clothes are going to be gone
yeah,
and there's going to be new clothes. And I know that they try their best to donate them. Some stores, some places throw them away, but to try their best to donate them. But only about 17%, and the statistics might be different in different countries, but in America only about 17% of our clothes actually get purchased from thrift stores, from those like
yeah,
resale
yeah,
stores,
yeah.
and the
Okay.
other 80 something percent gets thrown in the landfill. So
Yeah,
even if like your mind or your thought process is, okay, well, I'm going to buy this, but I'm going to donate it when I'm done with it. So it's not that bad. It's not that bad if I overconsume this thing because someone else can get it. We always
yeah,
often think about that, impoverished person who's going to take our cast offs and they're going to be so thrilled that we
yeah,
donated it. It's like, oh, they're going to be so excited they got this sweater, and we do that to kind of make ourselves feel better about our overconsumption. But the sad part is that a lot of times that doesn't happen. And at
yeah,
these like resale stores, they have to pick through it. And if something has a hole or is damaged, they throw it away anyway. So it's like, this isn't your garbage can. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Their store isn't
yeah,
your garbage can. But I really get saddened when I think about just that like idea of we're gonna make in order to sell instead of trying to be mindful about how much we make and hoping. There was this idea even at one of the sustainable brands that I worked at that we couldn't sell out of something. And I often push back and I was like, if we sell through something, that means we don't have anything left over and it's not a
yeah,
waste.
yeah,
And so it's like, it's a good thing to sell out actually.
yeah,
But I really appreciated what you said about feeling like clothes kind of don't last as long and taking care of them and trying to mend them and things. I think a huge encouragement that I would give anybody listening that is interested in learning more about how to be sustainable in their own apparel. Sometimes it can be hard to say, hey, I need you to find all these sustainable brands and invest lots of money because they often are more expensive. It's hard to
yeah,
flip that light switch of purchasing something for $30 and going and start spending 160. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes it's a huge switch. My first encouragement is to wear what you already have, but then secondly is to learn about fabrics and textiles and learn about what's the best fabric for our planet, because sometimes you can go in these stores that are a little less sustainable, but they have fabrics that will last longer, that
Yeah.
are better for our planet. And that's always the first step I give people, is to learn about textiles and how to be better consumers of the products that they're getting. And then that kind of starts selfishly kind of starts the slow slope into understanding that we do need to invest in better apparel. But that's often an easier step to take first, is to
Yeah.
learn about textiles and how
Yeah,
that
and
impacts our
I think
planet.
that's fascinating. I mean, I was you've got a great blog on your website about
Mhm.
linen, and I think linen is maybe it sort of goes in and out of fashion, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And people are like probably much more familiar with other fabrics perhaps than they are
Yeah.
with linen. But yeah, I was fascinated like reading your blog, and you talked about like it's from the flax pond, and I was like I didn't even know that, and I was like I was like, oh wow, that's amazing. I'd never really
Yeah.
even thought of that, where it came from. It just hadn't
Yeah.
really occurred to me. But yeah,
Mm.
that's one of the fabrics that you favor, isn't it, in terms of its
Yes.
sustainability?
It's one of the oldest materials that we can, like, if we look at like history of fashion, it's one of the first textiles that we as humans put together and decided we could cover our body with this. It grows really quickly. It's a really hardy plant, so you're going to get the most out of it. It's also one of those plants that um the fiber is really strong. When we think about the way fabric is woven or knitted together, there's not, as much as we like to picture it, like if you go to the store and buy a skein of yarn, it's like this continuous strand, right?
Yeah,
Well, natural fibers and even that yarn has to be kind of meshed together to kind of
yeah,
create one big long string. I hope I'm doing a good job explaining this. But they're shorter fibers are the ones that tend to pill, or kind of get bobbly on your sweaters or
yeah.
pants or
Okay.
things like that, break off. Linen is one of those that has a very long fiber, and so it's stronger, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
And it will last longer. And most people, the biggest complaint I get about linen, people will look at my clothes and be like, oh, I just love linen, but it wrinkles so easily. And it's like, what if we just didn't care about the fact that it wrinkled a little bit? And
yeah.
also, the more you wash it, the softer it gets and the less it wrinkles. And so I
Oh
think
wow, okay.
people don't want to get over that hump of like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna look a little sloppy the first couple times. I'm like, well, just,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know what to tell you. Like, if you just wait, be patient, it'll look beautiful. It's kind of like if you've ever had linen sheets before, maybe the first couple times you sleep in them, it's kind of stiff or whatever. But then after you wash them a few times, they're lovely. They're a dream to sleep in. They're so nice. So, um, yeah, linen is one of my favorites. I love cotton as well. Cotton's a huge one just because it's so readily available and grows, and everyone's super familiar with it. It has great attributes for our body. Bamboo's a great one. Um, and I have been working a little bit with tins or lyocell, sorry, and that is from when people might cut down trees for, lumber or whatever,
Yeah.
the leftover wood pulp, they've been able to make a fabric out of it.
Oh wow,
And
okay.
so, and it has a hand, like the feel of almost like a silk
Oh
fabric,
wow.
without the same amount of sheen, but it has a really soft hand. It's very breathable. It has really good attributes when you think about the function of the fabric. It's a great like summer weight, but it's also a little bit warm, kind of similar to how wool is. Um, and that's been a fabric that I've kind of dabbled with a little bit. It's hard to kind of introduce new fabrics maybe someone's not familiar with when you are a small startup brand and you're also trying to
Yeah.
build that brand recognition. Um, but yeah, I'm really passionate about the textiles that we use. It's very hard to preach a sustainable story if you're not getting sustainable fabrics.
Yeah.
Um, and I last fall we had a dead stock fabric, which means that they were going to throw it away, but we bought it instead of them throwing it away. It was a really random story. I lived in North Carolina and South Carolina for a number of years and was super familiar with a lot of the textile mills that were there, and then even some of the sewing facilities, factories that were there. And this one guy that I was friends with called me. He said, "Hey, this mill is closing. They have some fabric they're going to throw away. I know you're starting a brand. Do you want to go look at it?" And the thing that was unfortunate about it was like a brand, like for the last maybe 15 years, they were doing a lot of textiles for car manufacturing.
Okay.
So
Okay.
they didn't have like a lot of apparel stuff, but I spotted this knit fabric from off in the distance, and it was really old. He said, "Oh, that was one of the last ones we made." Like he said, I think it was like 2016 or 15 because they kind
Oh,
of started to
wow.
space
Yeah.
out. But it was a sweater knit, and they were gonna throw it away, and it had a little bit of rayon in it, which is not something I would usually use, but making it into a sweater, it was 80 something percent cotton and the rest was rayon. And I said, it's better for me to use it for the sweater than for you to throw it away. And
Yeah,
so I took
exactly.
it,
Yeah.
and just every time someone bought it, I gave them very clear care instructions and, sent them on their way hoping that they would wash it correctly so it would last long. But yeah, textiles are something that I don't think we often think about the process of how to create them and how that can impact our planet. I worked with a factory overseas that when they washed all their fabric, because it takes a lot of washing denim. If you ever do any Google searches about denim and like the impact of denim, you have to wash jeans, I think no less than 20 times before they're done. Um, and all that water just has to be thrown out, and it usually has dye in it, so it
Yeah,
can't be
yeah.
salvaged. But this factory that we worked with overseas, they would use rainwater
Oh,
to
okay.
wash all their clothes, and that seems, you know in the if you know anything about manufacturing, that's like a big whoa, I can't believe
Yeah.
they did that, they took the time to do that. But at the same time, it's like that's like the smallest thing that you can do.
Yeah.
Just make sure that the water is, you're not taking fresh drinking water from someone.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's all very interesting, and I'm thankful that I get to do it. And part of it is that education piece, and it's kind of hard
Yeah.
because
I
some
think
people
that's
aren't
huge,
ready
isn't it?
for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
some people aren't ready for it.
Yeah, well, I think it's the same with most industries, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is I think there's a gaining momentum across all industries that
Hmm.
there are consumers now that are beginning to like be like, actually, no, we want to like consciously make choices with companies that are going that extra mile to the distance to actually make these choices throughout their supply chain as well. It's not
Hmm.
just, sort of greenwashing at the end of it, but it's actually
Yeah.
diving deeper into it. And yeah, it's been great to listen to you talking about all the fabrics. But something you touched on there, which I think I did see another blog on your website about, which was actually caring for your clothes. And this is
Yeah.
something that I think really is again like completely missed in like the whole process,
Hmm.
isn't it? It's like, we don't really think about it. Obviously, you just think we've got to keep them clean, and it's like you wear them,
Hmm.
throw them in the laundry, and that's it, and carry on, get them out and wear them again. But
Hmm.
actually, how you care for them can make a huge difference in your environmental impact, but also
Hmm.
how long they last, which
Yeah.
again, if we can buy less because we can make what we've got last longer, then that's
Hmm.
a great step to start off with. So I don't know if you wanted to just share a little bit, because you were saying there, particularly with the jumper that you sold, like you were
Yeah.
very specific with people, like how they care for things. So I don't know if you want to just
Yeah.
share a few
Yeah.
sort of tips for people about that,
W-
would be
One
fantastic.
of the funniest things is, and it's not funny because I understand you're investing money into something and you want to make sure you care for it. So people will often say, "How do you wash this?" And I'll go, "Oh," I said, "Well, my rule of thumb for almost everything is that I wear it a few times. There's not a stain on it. I'm gonna wear it a couple times. If it
Yeah.
doesn't stink, I'm gonna wear it a few times." And some people will like crinkle their nose at that and go, "What? Like, well, you're gonna wear that a few times?" I'm like, "Well, not with like socks or undergarments, but like I'm
Yeah.
gonna like a blouse if I'm not
Yeah.
sweaty. Yeah, I'm gonna and jeans for yes,
Yeah.
100% jeans." Um, but I wash it on cold
Yeah.
after, I get the most wears out of it. And I try to do my best of washing it on cold with the lowest amount of water possible. That's my own thing, but maybe some people want more water. It's better for the planet not to, but to care for your clothes, the cold water actually does do the best. And one of my favorite things that I've kind of adopted in the past, I think it's been since 2020. 2020 is when I really started my sustainable journey for myself and my home and the way that I consume things. But are these laundry sheets, and so it's detergent, but it's just a sheet. And so it's been like air dried, and so it's the same soap that you would put in the dryer usually, or washing machine usually. They kind of look like dryer sheets, but it's soap. And so I use that. It's a gentle detergent. It doesn't have a lot of chemicals in it. It's pretty natural. And I utilize that. So I would suggest just doing research on the kind of soap you use, because sometimes a lot of chemicals can actually impact our textiles and make them deteriorate sooner. So doing research on that, I think, is important.
I've got I had a
Yeah.
great previous guest who that's her whole thing, was basically like home products and
Oh,
finding
wow.
sustainable ones. So
That's so cool.
there's a previous episode with Jessica Brennan, which is all about like selecting like but less chemicals for your
Yeah.
home and cleaning and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that would go hand in hand with your
yeah.
advice there as well.
Okay. Well, I didn't listen to that one before we I'll have to go back and listen to that. But yeah, so I utilize that, and I often talk about, like, I don't like putting things in the dryer. It's not good for, it's
Yeah,
like wasting electricity is one thing, but second thing is, like, you can buy like little hanging racks that are pretty small and compact to put your stuff on. Oftentimes, and I know it probably gets on my husband's nerves sometimes, I'll just throw stuff over the backs of like the dining room chairs to dry, hang it up. And a lot of, especially like the linen pieces that I have, I just hang it up and let it air dry. And then
yeah,
guess what? There's no wrinkles in it. It's
yeah.
magical.
Yeah,
Magic. So
I think
yeah.
in the UK well, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm in a rural area, but like we
Yeah.
do a lot of like line drying.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. And
and
that's so
also the areas
beautiful.
in your house, like you said,
Yeah.
and things. Rather, it's not. I suppose it's become more common, but it didn't used to be commonplace to have dryers in the way
Yes.
that I think Americans predominantly have them. But
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, and I think it's part of that, like, trying to be fast and like get things
yeah,
done. But that heat really, I remember for a long time I didn't have a washer and dryer in my home. And so I'd have to go to like a laundromat. I don't know
yeah,
if they call them something different over there.
yeah. No, that's fine.
But I would see women, this is so funny, throw like spandex, polyester bras into the dryer, and I would just like have a heart attack, because number one, I'm like, you're losing all the elasticity in your bra. It's like pointless now. It's doing nothing for you. But secondly, like, literally I was at one and the dryer caught fire
Oh wow. Okay.
because it had gotten so hot, and the
Yeah.
melting point for some of these textiles is so low that the
Yeah.
heat from this dryer at a laundromat that had been going and going and going all day caught on fire. And she was like, ah, and I was like, can I tell
Yeah.
you something? Like, trying to be gentle about it, but like, I wouldn't put your bras in the dryer. But it's kind of that like speed and maybe not having the place for it as well in her
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where taking care of your clothes is really important. For me, denim is one of those things that I rarely wash. It's
Yeah.
pretty rare. It has to get like a pretty major stain or be super stretched out, or, all these different things. But yeah, that's the big part of it. And then just caring for your clothes in the way of, I have like a sweater shaver, which is just like a thing that if, it gets those little, we call them pills. I don't know if there's something else
Yeah.
to
No,
call
it
them.
was sort of bubbles and
Yeah,
yeah.
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 On your sweater. And some people will be like, oh, it's time to throw that away. I'm like, no, you can shave it off. And it actually doesn't mess with the integrity of your sweater at all. It doesn't mess with the strength. What that is just kind of like the shedding of those fibers happening over time.
Okay.
And I mean, lots of different garments will do that. A coat might do that under your arms, or
Yeah.
maybe between your legs if your legs are rubbing together. That happens to me a lot. And so just have that shaver. It really does extend the life of your
Just makes
garments.
it look fresh again, I guess,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So those are just some little things that I encourage people to do. And again, that's something that you can do without, investing in really expensive apparel pieces. You can go and see what you already have in your closet, maybe something that you haven't reached for in a long time, because it has those little baubles on it, and shave them off and like, oh, I want to wear this again.
Yeah.
And so that's a
Yeah.
huge thing too.
Yeah, I love that. I think it is that's the thing with like every industry and everything. I think sometimes we think we want there to just be like a quick single solution, and
Hmm.
it's not. It's actually realizing like that it's all of these things coming together, finding the ways
Yeah.
to understand how to care for what we've got so that we can make it last longer, so we can be good custodians of it, really, I guess.
Yeah.
And then also like, being aware of our suppliers and things. And something that we did touch on earlier, which I know is a huge part of your brand, is actually like the importance of people, not just the environment.
Hmm.
Like we've talked quite a lot about the environment, the impact of fashion on the environment. I mean, there are some shocking statistics around, like you said, the amount of waste that's going to into landfill, and also like the impact on the water is a huge thing. And
Hmm.
it sounds like you've given us some great advice of basically looking for the textiles, learning more, educating ourselves. But I know something that you're really passionate about, which obviously came from one of your grandmas as well, is
Hmm.
marginalized people. And I guess that's you've kind of got two aspects of your business. One is the production of your
Hmm.
own clothes and looking after your workforce and the people involved in the supply chain. And then the other aspect is you're giving back to the community that you're based in, that is your home, and
Hmm.
you're very passionate about that. So I don't know where you want to start with, which one you want to
Yeah.
go with to start off
I,
with, but I want to give you
yeah,
time to
thank
talk about
you.
both because I know they're really
Yeah.
important to you.
I appreciate that. So I mentioned maybe towards the beginning of our conversation just about the seeds being planted in my life to kind of start Fern and Daisy. And part of that is definitely my grandmother, Fern, who started working in the incarceration system. But then also, you know, I if if you do any kind of research in our world as a whole, not specifically America, not specifically Appalachia, the impact of opioids has really hurt a lot
Yeah.
of families, a lot of communities, has really weakened our workforce. And because of that, weakened the economy in a lot of places and weakened the sense of community, right? And I've seen it ravage my area, in my
Yeah.
home area, in the last since I was a child. It's like a night and day difference, honestly. And it has personally impacted me. I had my aunt passed away from an overdose complications just in 2021. And then
I'm
I
so
have
sorry.
relatives. Yeah, thank you. Um, it has been difficult to see other members of my family struggle with addiction and really see the impact of what that has on a family, what that has on children of the people who are using and abusing substances, and then also just like how that really makes just perpetuates generational um despair. That's the word I
Yeah.
like to use, is that
Yeah.
despair, right? Because then, maybe 50 years ago there was despair there because they were impoverished, or maybe there wasn't a lot of work, or maybe, their family was leaving to go find work other places, or, a myriad of things. And now it's because, oh, my family is separated because maybe my mom is in jail or my father's in jail because of opioids or whatever. And it's this despair. And then that just perpetuates the cycle of like, okay, well, there's nothing for me in the world. I'm going to
Yeah.
do, all
Yeah.
these things. I don't see the best for me. I have tunnel vision about my life, right? And that's something I'm super passionate about, is trying in some small way, and I would love for it to be bigger, but I feel like I'm just one person,
Hmm.
is to kind of make that impact to bring hope to people's lives. And so I'm trying to do that through my business by first we're making this apparel, we're telling a sustainable story, we're talking about the planet, we're letting people have that kind of vision for the future of like, okay, we need to take care and be good stewards of the world that we're in. And the other piece of that is we work with a nonprofit that's based in Eastern Kentucky that services Eastern Kentucky, Southeast Ohio, a little bit of West Virginia, and then part of Eastern Tennessee. And what they do is they work hand in hand with a rehab facility. And when someone graduates from rehab, they have access to a loan that's specifically for them so
Yeah.
that they can have financial resources for housing, transportation, education, childcare, just a lot of things that you don't have access to when you come out of a place like that. Because oftentimes, though,
You've
you
lost
go in,
everything
yeah,
beforehand.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so, and so I felt really passionate about being able to give a portion of our profit to that kind of fund. And so the men and women, our money is earmarked just for women, because oftentimes they have a harder struggle because they're usually the primary caregivers of children
Yeah.
and have to kind of balance work and childcare. And they can apply for the loan. They have to pay a portion of it back. Oftentimes they want to pay all of it back, and they have a longer lead time, and there's also no interest on the loan as well.
Okay.
And so we give to that, and our goal in the next, it depends on funding and how big we get, or how the brand grows, but our goal is to eventually hire those women that we're helping to sew for us here in Appalachia and to make our product, and not just make product for us, but make product for other brands that
Yeah.
want to have sustainable manufacturing, ethical manufacturing, and give them a career that's not just necessarily sewing, like give them opportunities to job train in other areas
Yeah.
of the business. Because the fashion industry, contrary to a lot of people's beliefs, because if you're not familiar with it, don't really understand, but there are so many different kinds of jobs that you can do within a
Yeah.
fashion
Yeah.
company, and that are easily transferable to other businesses. And so wanting to bring that economic resilience into their lives and give them an
Kind of
opportunity to,
upskilling, I guess,
yeah,
really, that
yes,
with
yeah, that's a great word.
transferable skills. But
Yeah, yeah,
I just I think we're going to have all your links in the podcast show notes,
yeah,
but it would be great maybe if we can include the link to the charity that you work with as well, because
yeah,
I could feel
yeah,
your passion there, and hopefully maybe other people might feel called to go and maybe
yeah,
support them directly as well.
for
um
sure.
but I think I just want to like say, I mean, people might not even be aware of the opiates. Well, actually,
Hmm.
they were it started a lot with prescription drugs,
Hmm.
actually. So
Yes.
people might immediately jump to like illegal drugs, but
Hmm.
actually a lot of the problems came from prescriptions, and there
Yes.
was not a realization that the drugs that were being prescribed to people were actually highly addictive and
Hmm.
led to all of these problems that
Yeah,
you mentioned. And I just thought it was important to raise that actually these quite often were just normal people that
yeah.
had gone to their doctor, and they'd been prescribed this medication, and basically have found themselves, and the doctors didn't know, they had no idea that
Mm-mm.
it had the impact it did. And there's obviously been moves to make a lot of those prescription drugs illegal now, which,
Hmm.
although maybe helps future people, doesn't actually really
No.
serve those that were already well down the path to addiction to it. And yeah, it is really sad. And I mean, I think something that I often talk about on my podcast is just finding this place to kind of have compassion, and
Hmm.
just be free of really judging people, and just that a lot of these people want to get out of these situations, but they just don't know how. And it
Hmm.
sounds like what the charity you're working with is doing an amazing job. And equally, they're not, not looking for a free handout. They do want to work. They do want
Yeah.
to, be, I guess, of service, feel that, that sense that we all have, really. We want to feel like fulfillment, and like we're valued, and we're
Hmm.
contributing to the world and society. And it becomes very hard for these marginalized individuals. They possibly perhaps have criminal records as well to contend
Hmm.
with, as well as the drug addictions that they're trying desperately to overcome. So yeah, it's just this is one of the things I love about my podcast. I love about meeting people like you is, it's everything is connected. That's the biggest lesson I
Hmm.
think we can learn from nature, is like we have in society this kind of view that things are separated, and like we've got this hierarchical, humans at
Hmm.
the apex and the rest of nature is kind of underneath. But then that hierarchy continues through human society as well. And it's just realizing that everything is connected, and that we can, you said you were like, oh, I wish I had a bigger impact, but actually, just you know, you're having probably more of an impact than you will probably ever know. And I think
Mm,
that's the beauty of it is, you know, sometimes like you referred to it as the seeds that you're sowing, and
hmm
you know, you might never know, you know, you've changed someone's life with one of those loans, and you don't know how their life will unfold and the ripples that will flow out from that. And I think that's just one of the beauties of basically, I don't know, it's remembering this connection, isn't it? And for me, that's
mm,
what this connection with nature is. I think it goes hand in hand. Like if you can't care for nature and not care for people. It's like
yeah,
they can't
yeah.
be separated. Like, you know, and it's just, yeah, it's just beautiful to hear everything that you're doing at your in your home as well. And that's another important thing, isn't it? It doesn't have to be, you know, we want to change the world, and sometimes we're guilty of thinking the world's
Yes,
like
yes,
out there, and actually,
yeah.
you know, just educating yourself about issues that are closer to home, and finding your way to be of service. And
Mm,
yeah, I love it. Like
yeah.
just
Well, thank
really,
you.
no, it's fantastic. It's amazing to speak to you and hear like your drive, I guess your motivation for behind it and
Mm,
your driving forces, but like just how much you care as well just is very evident. Yeah, and it's I want to see your brand, like, you know, not explode, because we're not into like
yeah.
over
Yes, yeah.
but like
Yeah.
just being, you know, just getting the, I guess, the appreciation it deserves,
Mm.
to have, so that you can go on and have a greater impact.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, my hope is that one day, we're kind of creating sustainable things, not just for my brand, but for other brands that maybe service men or children or,
Yeah.
just different things and give people opportunity. I didn't mention this before, but one of the things that I've done since I was in college and took a break when I was working in my career, and I've started up in the last 2 years, is I go inside prisons and jails and I do ministry work there. And kind of what you were talking about giving people that hope, um, is just so important, and giving them the opportunities and the resources. I remember sharing my story about just how I grew up and where I am now, and it was one of the most poignant things that anyone's ever said to me, and really humbling, was that this lady said, my hope is that my children end up like you, that
Mm.
they have that hope, and that they have that ability to dream, because my
Yeah.
parents didn't have the ability to dream. They had to put their, face to the ground and work and shelter us from things in order for us to be able to have that dream and that hope and that optimism. And so that's what I really want to do. I want kids to be able to grow up in homes where they feel safe, where they can dream, and where they can have a career beyond the limited access that they see in their small communities. And so, even though it is about apparel, it is about sustainability, it is about the world at large, if I can help, one family see their children have this beautiful, fruitful life,
Yeah.
that doesn't just mean making lots of money. That means feeling safe and feeling really loved and, taken care of. That's what's really important to me. So I really appreciate all your kind words. That's really sweet.
Yeah,
And
no, it's
yeah.
I do think that's one of the things as well, is like, you know, I was talking to a lovely girl who's actually in Canada, in British
Hmm.
Columbia, and she has and also a small business, but she is a chocolatier, so she makes chocolate.
Ooh.
And and she's very passionate about social sustainability, because she said it's something that, you know, a lot of the focus when when you mention sustainability, people always jump to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, you know, what you were just mentioning there about social sustainability is like, you know, people, we have these marginalized groups, we have these people, I mean, who are, you know, really struggling to survive. You know, their day-to-day focus is literally on
Mm-hmm.
survival. And when you're in that state, you can't expect them to, you know, like be able to like worry about like the environment and things,
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
you know, they're worrying about how they're going to eat, where they're going to sleep, you know, if they're going to be safe, you know, and secure. And so we need to uplift them as well, it's
Mhm.
important, like, it's like no one left behind kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it's really important that as we uplift them, then they have the extra capacity. Because I mean, I talk a lot about trauma with people, and one
Mm.
of the things with trauma is you kind of I had this great analogy from a coach I worked with, and she said, like, your capacity is like a swimming pool, and like everything that happens to you, like little traumas and big traumas, are like beach balls or, balloons going into
Wow.
your swimming pool. And eventually your swimming pool gets full and you've kind of reached
Hmm.
capacity, and that's it. You can't cope with anything else. And that's when you tip into things like PTSD and things.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is the thing, like when you're in that survival state, you haven't got capacity to, be concerned with the bigger picture things.
Hmm.
And it's, by helping people to kind of find that safety and security, they can free up some of their capacity that then they can go on and become custodians of other things, whether it's,
Yeah.
their immediate family, like you said, giving their children the space to sort of dream and have hopes for the future. But it
Hmm.
just becomes this like ongoing legacy of that touches more and more people. And yeah, I think it's a conversation that we need to have more of.
Hmm.
And it is, I think what's really poignant about you is that like you're dealing with some of the people in society who are probably marginalized the most, like, the prison community, drug addiction. That's, as a society, we quite often turn our backs on them, probably
Yeah.
more than anyone else. There's a lot of judgment around them. So I think it's been really lovely to kind of talk to you and have that kind of different, I don't know, like view of them, I suppose, and
Yeah.
think about it in a deeper sense. Um,
Mm.
I really appreciate what you're doing, and I think, it's part of what I love about the podcast is just meeting amazing people around the world, like, and it gives me so much hope that, there are amazing people like yourself, and you feel like you're not doing enough, but you're the ripple. You've only been, was it 4 years you guys have been
Well, we
going?
started the brand in 21, but we didn't launch until like having actual clothes till 23, like fall. So
Yeah,
it's
I
been
could,
less
because
than a
it's quite
year.
a lead time in fashion, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
it is.
yeah,
Yeah, it's two
yeah,
years. Mm.
yeah. So it's like, you're still like in your little seedling
Yes, we're
stage.
still very new. I have to encourage myself with that very often that, most brands, most businesses don't, go past a year. Most don't go after
Yeah.
2 years. And so I'm trying to encourage myself with that. So I'm trying to do the most. But yeah, your encouragement is so sweet. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to share my story and to talk with you. And you are so sweet and you're so passionate and open and can tell that you have like a huge heart. And so it's been really wonderful to talk to you.
No, it's been my pleasure. And I don't know, is there anything that you would like to like leave us with? I mean, I think you give us hope for everything. You give us hope for the fashion industry that,
Mm.
we can go out there and do things differently.
Hmm.
Hope for society really that like there is just a different way of doing things, and it
Hmm.
can work. But yeah, is there any, I don't know, advice or anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think I would say not to be overwhelmed. It's very easy when we look at the state of our world around us to be overwhelmed. We look at
Yeah.
like a trash island in
Yeah.
these on the coming up on the beaches, and you're like, oh my goodness, this should have stopped 30 years ago. Yes, it probably should have, but we can
Yeah.
only be in control of ourselves and our future and how we impact. And so I would say not to get overwhelmed and to really take a look at your life and kind of figure out what are the small ways that you could start to
Yeah.
be more sustainable. And that might look different for each person within your means and within your time span. And then let the kind of slowly build because we can't, it's not really sustainable to go through your house and throw out all your plastic things and then, start afresh. Use the product that you have, kind of go through things, use the clothes that are in your closet, wear them, and then over time start to build a wardrobe of things that you've either thrifted or maybe gotten from a friend, things that you've invested in that are good quality fabrics,
Yeah.
and then things that you've invested in that are really well made and made well and ethically. And really think about, do I need to invest X amount of dollars into this trend that we know is going to not be a trend in the next summer. I think often, and this is like a small thing, but like last summer when the Barbie movie was really big, everyone was buying a lot of pink and things with Barbie all over it. And I will be very shocked this summer if we see a lot of people wearing a lot of Barbie things and stuff. And so, but you couldn't go into a store without seeing it everywhere. And so, really just being mindful of trends and what you're purchasing and what makes sense for you. If you do have to dress up for something like an event or like a party, like consider going to a thrift store or renting something or borrowing something from someone. And so that's really my big thing, is just to take the time to, I mean, you're already listening to this podcast, so you do already care about the planet, or interested in it anyways. And keep doing what you're doing. I think, it's awesome that you have the care in the first place. That's the biggest hurdle. Most people don't care. So, yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, I love that. I think it is overwhelm is such a big thing for people, and and it kind of keeps us stuck. It stops us like actually putting into practice, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist at heart, so I can do overwhelm with the best of people, because I'm like, oh, I've got to like research everything, like you said, go through my entire house on one day and like know all the answers, and then you don't do it for like 3 years or something.
It's tempting to do that, but it's often not going to be successful.
And that's it. And it's like, obviously we're talking about fashion, so today it's like, even if all you take from this is you go, I'm not going to wash my jeans as frequently as
that's a huge thing. And also your water bill will go down and your electric bill, so you'll be happy.
And that's what I love about, is just sometimes it can be like these really small, simple actions, and that's what gets you started. And then, after, a couple of months of not washing your jeans quite so frequently and realizing it's not quite as hideous and as you thought it might be, you can start taking extra steps. But it's been absolutely fantastic speaking with you, Nicole. I hope everyone's I've got a lot of listeners in America, so I hope everyone's gonna go and check out your brand and learn more about what you do, and if they're looking for a really nice investment piece of clothing to have a staple in their wardrobe for the future, I hope they'll think about investing in you and your business, because what you do is just really important, and I want to see you have a huge amount of success with it, because I think it's just really the heart and soul that is in your business is just what the world needs right now.
Well, thank you so much. People can't see me. We're on a Zoom, but I'm smiling really big, so I really appreciate it. Yes.
Thank you so much for listening to the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I truly hope this conversation has brought some hope and inspiration into your life. I would love to have these messages ripple out across the world. So if you can, please share this episode with your friends, leave a review on your favourite podcast player, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to connect with me on the links provided in the podcast description. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. But don't forget to simply get out there and enjoy the natural world.